It was one of those early autumn evenings when the shadows stretch long across the old wooden floor of our family home, and the air is thick with the smell of pumpkin spice and the crispness of fading leaves. I sat at the dining table, the rustic centerpiece of our family gatherings, where laughter and arguments echoed loudly against the high ceilings. My heart raced with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. This was not a normal family dinner, not at all. "Isabella, could you please pass the bread?" my mother asked, her voice light but resonating with a quiet authority, as if she held the threads of our family tightly knotted in her hands. I nodded absent-mindedly, the freshly baked loaf warm and soft beneath my fingers. As I reached across the table, my sister shot me a sidelong glance, her eyes sparkling with something I couldn't quite identify, mockery or maybe outright disdain. Her makeup was flawless, highlighting her perfectly symmetrical features, a contrast to my plainness. It felt like an unspoken competition, the kind that had simmered under the surface of our relationship for years. "Mom, why is the dinner so extravagant?" "We do this every time Grandma visits," my brother questioned, breaking the almost sacred silence we held around the dinner table. I could sense it looming, the tension that was expected, almost comfortable now, like an old pair of shoes that sometimes hurt but were familiar nonetheless. "Your grandmother turned 70 today, Jeremy." "It is a special occasion," my father responded, his tone holding a hint of frustration. He always had a way of putting his foot down, yet somehow managing to keep the peace. He was the eye of the storm, calm and collected amid the chaos that was our family dynamic. 70, more like 75. "You really think she's going to notice the difference?" my sister quipped, the corners of her lips curling into a smirk as she picked at her salad. I could feel my cheeks flush, an urge to defend our grandmother simmering beneath the surface. How could she be so ungrateful, so detached? "Be nice," I barely managed to whisper, my heart racing. But she flicked her eyes toward me, and in that moment I felt the weight of an accusation. "Oh please, Isabella, do you really think the old bat cares?" I froze, her words like ice piercing through the warmth of our dinner setting. "Watch your mouth," my father interjected, his tone firmer now, warning her that this was not a conversation to be had at the dinner table. The tension tightened like a noose, you could feel it coiling around us all. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the urge rising in me to retaliate, to scream that we should honor our family, our traditions. But the frustration hung in the air, thick and palpable. "Isabella seems to be the only one with feelings around here," my sister shot back, her voice laced with sarcasm. The room stilled. There were only sounds, the ticking of the clock on the wall and the faint rustle of leaves outside. Did she really mean that? The words struck a chord deep within me. Did my family see me as the emotional one, the one who cared too much while they drifted through life, unfazed by anything but their own insatiable desires? "Save it for later," my mother replied, trying to diffuse the brewing storm. She turned her attention to my grandmother, who had been awfully quiet, tucked into her seat at the far end of the table, her frail hands resting on her lap. "I baked your favorite chocolate cake, Mom. I know how much you love it." Grandmother smiled softly, her wrinkled face lighting up like a child's. "Thank you, dear, you always know how to make me feel special." I watched her eyes turn, scanning the room for approval from the rest of us. But there was something else in her gaze, something hidden beneath the layers of years and loved ones lost. Maybe, just maybe, she realized the fractures within our family bonds too. Dinner progressed, awkwardly punctuated by forced conversations and half-hearted laughter. I pushed my food around the plate, only occasionally glancing up to observe my family. My brother and sister continued their tit-for-tat, and I felt my heartbeat quicken each time they undermined each other. Do they not understand how dangerous this all is? The cracks in our family foundation were becoming more pronounced, and with each jab I felt unease swell within me. "I heard Uncle Tom is planning on selling the old family cabin," my brother declared, shocking me into full attention. The cabin had been a source of many memories. As kids, we'd spend summers splashing in the lake, the sun's rays dancing on our skin. Can you believe it? All of our childhood memories gone just like that while we are still here scrambling for a piece of the inheritance. Those words set off a chain reaction within me. The thought of losing those memories, the place that felt like a sanctuary, stirred something deep. "It doesn't matter as long as we have each other," I spoke up, louder than I intended, my voice cracking slightly as I fought to keep my emotions in check. "Oh please, Isabella, spare us that drivel. You act like we're supposed to hold hands and sing Kumbaya while Uncle Tom cashes in on it," my sister shot at me. I knew she was frustrating herself and trying to bait me, testing how far she could push before I erupted, but I was done being her punching bag. "I may not be the favorite, but I understand how important the memories are. You might want to think about that before you turn everything into a joke," I responded, the words tumbling out unfiltered. For a moment, everything went silent. My heart raced, beating so loudly it drowned out the clinking of cutlery and hushed gasps from the others at the table. Her smirk vanished, replaced by a glimmer of disbelief before she composed herself. My mother's gaze shifted between us, but in that moment I felt defiant. I had always been the one who held the emotional weight of our family, like I was the tether to hold us together, but I was tired. Tired of the mocking, the gaslighting, the insensitivity. I could feel my hands shaking under the table. "I'm just saying that the cabin meant something to all of us. Not just a financial gain, it's family history," I pressed, my own frustration boiling to the surface. "Fine, have your little history lessons. But at the end of the day, no one else cares," she scoffed, prodding an old wound. Maybe you don't care, I shot back, my voice softening, but I do. The tension that hung in the air thickened as both my parents took deep breaths. My mother's brows furrowed, and I could feel my brother's eyes dart between us in silent judgment. Nobody liked it when the harmony was disrupted, especially not with the prospect of an inheritance looming over our heads. Isabella, can we not ruin this lovely dinner? My father said a bit too firmly, frustration spilling into his tone. This whole thing is supposed to celebrate your grandmother. But are we really celebrating, or are we just pretending everything is fine when it is not? I shot back, my voice barely above a whisper but full of determination. I felt a rush of air leave my lungs. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but the truth hung in the air, challenging each of us. Isabella, please. My mother's words were now even more strained. You are overreacting. No, I am being honest, I almost yelled, then inhaled sharply, trying to compose myself. Why was it that the truth made everything so much more complicated? The atmosphere weighed heavily upon me, and the fear of breaking apart our family even more seeped into my bones. It was suffocating, as if the walls were closing in on me. It was then that I heard it, my grandmother's faint voice cutting through the chaos. Have you all forgotten what matters most? She asked, her tone gentle but firm. Not money or properties, but the bonds we share, those are more valuable than gold. I met her gaze, and for the first time that evening an understanding passed between us. I could feel her warmth, her desire to mend the fractures, but the rest of the table remained tense, eyes flicking around like they were afraid of what might come next. But beneath all that, I realized something distinct. The inheritance battles had already begun, unspoken yet palpable, invisible lines drawn in the sand. This small skirmish tonight was just the tip of the iceberg. I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that everything was about to change, and I wasn't sure if any of us would come out unscathed. Do you all hear that? My brother said suddenly, and I raised my eyebrows, confused. It sounds like money being flushed down the drain. And just like that, the environment shifted again, every semblance of resolution evaporating. It was apparent they were too far gone, too entrenched in their desires and competition to realize the real prize was family. I clenched my fists beneath the table, feeling anger flourish in my chest. Nobody cared, and yet, ironically, it only fueled my resolve. I could no longer be the emotional doormat, nor would I continue to kneel in the shadows. Maybe you all will care once it starts falling apart, I whispered just loud enough to be heard, the words spilling from my lips like molten lava. The room fell silent again, the air electric. My chest tightened with exhilaration but also dread. The unsettling chill mingled with the warmth of the room, creating chaos within my heart. And then I realized that I needed to take action, to reclaim what was mine before it slipped further from my grasp. The idea of revenge, of fighting back against the betrayals that hovered above us like a storm cloud, began to creep inside me. As dinner dragged on, the laughter and chatter resumed, a shallow facade of normalcy painted over the uncomfortable truth. But I could feel it building, a storm brewing beneath the surface, and I promised myself that I would not shy away from it any longer. I would fight for my grandmother's legacy, for the memories, and most of all for myself. As the dessert plates came out, I looked around the table once more, feeling the shift within me. No one else had realized it yet, but the battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to unleash my wrath upon those who had betrayed me. The evening ended, the food lay untouched, our family picture fractured. As I stood up from the table, my hands trembling, I turned toward the door, adrenaline surging within me. The realization was clear. This was far from over and in fact just beginning. When I pushed the door open, the cool autumn air wrapped around me like a shroud. I took a deep breath, thinking of the cabin, of my grandfather's laughter and my grandmother's wisdom. No one would take that from me, not now, not ever. And then in that moment I made a vow to myself. They may not understand now, but soon they would see the truth, and when they did, they would regret every moment they laughed at my heart. As I stepped outside, the door slammed behind me, echoing the tension of the evening. One thing was crystal clear: this was far from over. I was just beginning my journey to reclaim what was rightfully mine, and it would not take long for them to realize just how wrong they had been. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that. As I stood in the kitchen, the aroma of roasted chicken and rosemary wafting through the air, I could feel the tension thickening like a heavy fog. Tonight, it was my family's annual dinner at our grandparents' house, and everyone was expected to be there, not that everyone wanted to be. I glanced down at the table set for 8, the elegant silverware glinting under the warm glow of the overhead lights, and my stomach fluttered with a mix of anticipation and dread. The walls were adorned with faded family photos, capturing moments that felt worlds away from the current storm brewing beneath our roof. My heart raced as I remembered our last family gathering, where secrets had slithered into the open like snakes, leaving wounds that had only just begun to heal, or should I say fester. Isabella, stop daydreaming and help your sister with the plates, my mother called out from across the kitchen, her sharp tone cutting through my thoughts. I turned towards her, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently on the counter. The way she looked at me, disappointed, almost made my cheeks flush. Did she even remember our last fight over the inheritance? I had fought for recognition, for a place at the table. Yes, mother, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper as I joined my sister, who was balancing a stack of mismatched plates. I swear I can feel the tension from a mile away, my sister muttered, her voice low but laced with frustration. I do not understand how they act so normal. It's like they forgot everything that happened over Thanksgiving. I nodded, feeling the weight of her words hang heavily in the air. She was right, my parents had acted like nothing had happened, as if they had just chosen to bury the truth deep down where nobody could dig it up. But I could feel it, a truth that gnawed at me with every heartbeat. Just then my brother entered the kitchen, a wide grin plastered across his face like a mask, but I could see the slight twitch in his jaw. He had a tendency to overcompensate when things got tense. "What's up, fam? Ready to eat?" he said, chuckling in a way that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I hope you saved some of that fancy wine for me." I exchanged a quick glance with my sister, who rolled her eyes. How could he remain so oblivious, pretending as if everything was perfectly fine? The doorbell echoed through the house, cutting through our quiet murmurs. "That's them," my mother announced, brushing a stray hair behind her ear. I felt my stomach harden as a wave of anxiety washed over me. My grandparents were here, and with them the manila envelope containing the will that had stirred up all the trouble between us for months. My fingers twitched and I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. As the door swung open, my grandfather's boisterous laugh filled the room, but I could sense the underlying current of unease. My grandmother followed closely behind, her soft smile masking the distress etched into her features. "We brought dessert," she chimed, presenting a pristine cake that sparkled under the kitchen lights. But I could hardly focus on the cake. The tension in the room crackled like static electricity. "Good to see you all," my grandfather boomed, extending his arms for a hug. I obliged, forcing a smile while feeling the coolness of his shirt against my cheek. It was the kind of hug that felt more like an obligation than warmth. As I pulled away, I caught a flicker of something in my grandmother's eyes, a sadness that mirrored my own thoughts. Dinner progressed in a familiar fashion, with polite chit-chat exchanged over dishes that had become traditions. Yet I could feel the words hanging in the air, unspoken but potent. My brother attempted to steer the conversation toward sports, while my sister's gaze was fixed on her phone, her fingers flicking to some lifeline she had grasped. I felt a knot tighten in my chest as I witnessed my parents sharing knowing glances, conspiratorial and more than just casual, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that they were hiding something from me. "Isabella, I believe you were telling us about your new job," my grandfather prompted, eyes twinkling with genuine curiosity. The warmth of the spotlight made my throat dry as I prepared to respond. "Yes, it's going well. I'm working on a project that—" My words fell flat as I saw my mother subtly shake her head. The message was clear: do not reveal everything. "Actually, it's not as interesting as it sounds," I corrected myself, the smile beginning to sting as it felt forced. All right, my father interrupted, his voice rising to fill the gaps in the conversation. "We should talk about what really matters, right?" His gaze landed on that manila envelope resting ominously on the side table. Its very presence felt like a ticking time bomb ready to go off. I remained frozen, my heart pounding so loudly it was a surprise no one seemed aware of it. "We will read your grandfather's will after dinner," my mother announced, her tone overly casual, but I could sense the tension building within that statement, like layers of cake stacked too high. Everyone exchanged glances, some strained, others nervous. "You know I've got my heart set on that cabin by the lake, right?" my brother said, trying to lighten the mood. I could see myself becoming the next great outdoorsman. Laughter erupted around the table, but I couldn't join in. I kept my eyes glued to that envelope. I could feel the weight of its contents pressing down on me. The thought of being betrayed haunted me like a ghost I couldn't shake off. "What makes you think you will get anything at all?" my sister shot back, her voice sharp as a knife. The table grew quiet, a thick silence engulfing us as her words hung like a cloud of suspicion. "That's enough," my mother snapped, her eyes flashing. "Let's not turn this into another argument." She turned back toward my brother, who looked taken aback, and it made me realize how fast the tides had shifted. I hadn't meant to stir the pot, yet here we were with the rancor spilling over from previous dinners. I plucked at the fabric of my dress, the cotton ruff against my fingertips. I had to speak up. "There's no need to pretend that we all do not know what is at stake here. The will is a big deal. It is what has divided us as a family," I said, my voice finding its footing as I leveled my gaze at my parents. "We all know that whoever is favored will get the most out of it. It is unfair." "Enough, Isabella," my mother snapped again, her face going pale. "You do not understand the complexities of this situation." Her voice cracked slightly at the end, revealing just how much she wanted to keep the peace. But as I searched her eyes, I saw something deeper, a flicker of fear, uncertainty. Maybe I had been wrong to think our disagreements were merely petty. Perhaps they were rooted in something more fundamental. "Complexities, please. This has nothing to do with complexities, but everything to do with favoritism," I pressed on, feeling my resolve strengthen. My heart raced, but I found strength in my conviction. "Why are you simply okay with being cut off while others are hoarding riches? You speak as if you have been cast out, but there are repercussions to everything," my father retorted, his voice rising as frustration lined his features. "You think you deserve what you believe is owed to you. I deserve to be treated equally," I said firmly, my hands shaking slightly as I set them on the table to steady myself. As the words left my mouth, I felt a weight lifting, even if only for a moment. "You all chose them over me long ago." The silence that followed was deafening, thick with unresolved issues and emotions that had been buried for far too long. I could see my siblings exchanging looks, their expressions flickering between disbelief and disappointment, and I realized I was standing alone in this battle. Then the unexpected happened. My grandmother, usually quiet and dignified, spoke up. "Isabella is right. Families should support each other, not tear each other apart." Her voice wavered as she looked around the table and noticed the shocked faces of my family. "My dears, I have kept quiet about the wolf for too long." Gasps erupted as attention snapped to her. "But I must speak up for the sake of my family." I felt a jolt of adrenaline rush through me. This was it, the moment something had shifted could be monumental. "What do you mean?" my brother asked, wide-eyed, leaning forward in his chair. "Enough of this cycle. Your grandfather's wishes were never meant to divide," she continued, her voice gaining strength while my heart quickened. I felt a flicker of hope, and yet dread curled in the pit of my stomach. "The fortune should not decide our worth but should unite us." As she reached for the manila envelope, time seemed to stand still and I could almost hear my heartbeat echoing in my ears. "I need to reveal what has been hidden from you," my grandmother stated, her expression determined, a fire igniting within that I had never seen before. The envelope trembled in her hands as she unraveled the secrets that had separated us. "This is not merely about money, it is about legacy, love, and what bonds us as a family." Before she could continue, the door slammed shut behind us, rattling the walls and breaking the tension in an instant. The unexpected sound startled everyone into silence, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. My heart thundered wildly as I turned to see my sister shivering, her eyes wide with alarm. "What was that?" she whispered, glancing toward the door as though it had become a malevolent entity of its own. We all exchanged glances filled with shock, confusion, and a hint of fear. What had just happened? Just then a voice rang out from behind us, cutting through the silence. "Did someone say family division?" The words lingered in the air, thick and suffocating, as I turned, wide-eyed, towards the source. And there stood my father's brother, a newcomer to our tense little drama, an unexpected player in our already fraught family dynamics. His presence felt both like an intrusion and a revelation, and my heart sank as I realized he was once again a wild card in this intricate game of family loyalty. The room was silent, awaiting his next move, and I felt cold tendrils of anxiety snake around my mind. I knew then that we were standing on the precipice of something far too large to comprehend, and the ensuing storm would inevitably come crashing down upon us. What a tangled web we wove, and I could not shake the mounting feeling that this was only the beginning of something far more explosive than I had ever anticipated. My heart raced as I stepped into the living room, the familiar scent of fresh coffee mingling with the faint aroma of the evening's dinner. It felt like a battlefield, the air thick with tension. My mother stood by the kitchen island, her hands busy chopping vegetables, but I could see the tightness in her shoulders. My brother was sprawled on the couch, his eyes glued to his phone, every so often glancing my way with a look of contempt mixed with indifference. My sister was at the dining table, flipping through her notes, pretending to be immersed in her studies, but I could see the way her pencil moved, scratching a bit harder when I caught her gaze. "Isabella, could you please keep it down? I am trying to focus here," my sister snapped, snapping me out of my quiet contemplation. The irritation in her voice made me flinch, but I kept my mouth shut. It was not the first time my sister had used her studies as a weapon against me, trying to assert her importance in the family hierarchy. This was her world, the high grades, the praises, while I was often stuck in the shadows. "I wasn't even making noise," I said softly, my palms beginning to sweat. The coolness of the marble countertop felt supportive against my hands, grounding me. I wanted to scream at her to stop pretending we were living in equal worlds, especially after what happened with the inheritance. I could still see the moment burned into my memory when my mother had casually mentioned that the family home would transfer to my sister. A whopping $400,000 worth of property. My heart sank while my sister beamed like she was crowned royalty. My thoughts spiraled into dark corners, fueling the bitterness that had taken root since the revelation. It was unfair. We had both grown up in this house, yet my mother had favored my sister without batting an eye. I felt like a ghost haunting my own childhood, watching from the sidelines while my sister swept away all the praise. "Isabella, you are here. Finally, I thought you got lost," my mother interrupted my thoughts, a sharp smile on her lips that didn't reach her eyes. "Can you help me with dinner? We want everything to be perfect for your grandparents' visit tonight." The anxiety in her voice stirred something deep within me. "Of course, mother," I said, forcing a smile to mask the turmoil beneath. I could a faint hint of desperation in her tone. My brother merely scoffed, turning his attention back to his phone as if social media held more value than family connections. I joined my mother by the counter and grabbed a knife to help with the vegetables. As I sliced through the carrots, I could hear my sister muttering something about unfairness under her breath. My stomach twisted at the thought, the weight of her manipulation pressing down hard. "Could you cut that out? Seriously, you do not need to be so dramatic," I said, focusing on the rhythm of my knife, hoping to drown out her disdain. My mother shot a warning glance in my direction but said nothing. The silence hung heavily between us. I felt so betrayed by the two people I should have been able to trust the most. I wanted to confront her about the house, to demand an explanation about how my hard work somehow amounted to less than my sister's entitled position. Instead, I just tightened my grip on the knife, my knuckles turning white. As I prepared the meal, the chaos of my emotions churned violently within me. I felt resentment festering, the injustice igniting a fire in my gut. "Do you ever wonder why you chose her over me?" My voice cracked, the question pouring out before I could stop it. There it was, raw and real, hanging in the air, thick like the aroma of the simmering sauce. "What do you mean by that?" My mother looked up at me, shocked, Her chopping came to an abrupt halt, every bit of tension in her body coiling tighter. "Come on, this is ridiculous," I continued, pushing out the words despite the lump in my throat. "You constantly praise her for her grades, her accomplishments. Meanwhile, I am just here, invisible. Did you ever stop to think about me?" My mother started, but the words fell away as she turned back to her task, her hands moving mechanically over the ingredients. "I worked just as hard," I cried, anger flowing over. "I deserved recognition too, but all you see is her." "Isabella, stop," my brother interjected, finally lifting his gaze from the screen. "You sound pathetic. Just accept that she is better than you at everything. It's not a crime to admit you are not as good." Each word felt like a slap to the face, and my heart went cold. "Well, you really know how to make someone feel like garbage, don't you?" I shot back, my voice trembling. "Isabella, please," my mother said sharply, then paused, fists clenched tightly at her sides. "This is not the time or place. Grandma and Grandpa will be here soon, and I do not want to deal with this right now." That stung. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. My family's secret was now out, and I had become the burden. "You think I care about them walking in on this? This is about us." The room fell silent. The sound of the chopping halted, and my sister's pencil stopped scratching against paper. I could hear the clock ticking loudly on the wall, marking every second of my humiliation. My brother's eyes darted back to his phone, blatantly dismissing me. My mother just avoided my gaze, and I sensed a tremor in her hand as she resumed slicing the vegetables, chopping even harder than before, as if to drown out the noise of our bubbling conflict. "I'm just going to do my best to help get dinner ready," my mother said finally, her tone sharp again. "We do not have time for this. You want to waste your energy fighting your sister. Wouldn't you rather put that effort into your career?" A knot formed in my stomach. This wasn't just a family disagreement. This was everything I had ever felt piling onto my shoulders. The switching of allegiances, the favoritism that hurt so deeply, it had all been building to this moment. How could she not see it? "My career, mother? You mean the one where I put in twice the effort and yet just get ignored? And this inheritance discussion, are we just going to forget that too? It is not fair that my sister will have everything. I will not have you disrespect your sister in my house." Her voice rose like a wave crashing against a shore, a warning that rattled me to my core. This was not the life I had envisioned, not the family ties I had once cherished. My sister stood now, eyes gleaming with vindictiveness. "Why don't you just move out if you feel so unappreciated? No one is stopping you." I felt my breath hitch, a flurry of emotions warring within me. The last shred of self-control began to crack, and I fought back tears, swallowing hard to keep my composure. "Maybe I will," I spat, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. Those words echoed defiantly, igniting a spark of liberation. Suddenly the doorbell rang, cutting through the tension like a knife. The sound sent a shudder down my spine. Grandma and Grandpa were here, the last people I wanted to see right now. My sister glanced at me, her eyes filled with smug satisfaction. "Guess you will have to pretend everything is fine now." The weight of the evening shifted dramatically, tension hanging as thick as the fragrance of dinner wafting from the kitchen. I heard my mother call out, putting on her grandparent voice that somehow always soothed her frazzled nerves. "I will get it, stay here." I stood frozen, my breath shallow, heart pounding as I faced the apparent chaos of my family. Everything felt unsteady, teetering on the edge of a cliff. In my mind, I was ready to leap, to break free from the bindings of this injustice, but my body stayed rooted in place. "What do you think will happen?" my brother asked, his voice laced with skepticism. "Are you just going to ruin dinner? You always do this." The slamming of the door behind me echoed loudly as family members began entering, ensconced in pleasantries and excited chatter. But to me, it all felt hollow, a facade ready to crack. My nerves tingled with anticipation of the confrontation that lingered just underneath the surface, threatening to spill over. I could feel the burden of my choices weighing heavily on me. Perhaps there was a way to turn this all around. Maybe I could gather my strength, confront my family, and finally take my rightful place without being overshadowed by the weight of my sister's dominance. The flicker of determination surged through me, igniting an internal fire that I had never known. "Dinner is served." My mother called from the dining room, her voice a sweet yet strained melody. My sister and brother exchanged glances while I drifted to the table, the atmosphere thick with unresolved tension. As we all settled in for what was supposed to be a cozy dinner, I steeled myself, my mind racing with thoughts of how this would unfold. The evening would bring family stories, laughter, and chatter, but deep down, I knew things would never be the same. I felt unyielding, a storm brewing just beneath the surface, ready to emerge. Suddenly, just as they began passing around the dishes, a jarring thought hit me. What if I exposed the family secrets tonight? My heart raced with anticipation as I wondered what would happen if I declared my intentions, fought back in this twisted game of manipulation, favoritism, and unmet desires. I took a deep breath as the first bite of the meal passed my lips, and in that split second I felt it, the empowering surge of finally being ready for my own truth. The family tension was palpable, but I was prepared to break through it all. The evening was merely the prelude to the storm that followed, a looming shadow that waited for the right moment to strike. Staring at my sister, I got a feeling that curled my fingers into tight fists. This was not over, not by a long shot. And as the clatter of forks and laughter rang in my ears, I smiled to myself, knowing the moment to act was coming soon. I could feel it in every fiber of my being. Tonight was just the beginning. I stood at the entrance of my parents' home. my heart pounding against my ribcage like a caged bird desperate for freedom. The sun was setting slowly over Lakeside Grove, its golden rays filtering through the trees, casting long shadows on the ground that seemed to mirror the darkness creeping into my heart. The familiar sense of the house, rich, greasy food wafting from the kitchen and the unmistakable, sweet undertones of freshly baked dessert, reminded me of the countless family dinners we had shared. Yet today, the comfort of those memories felt tainted and shallow, like a beautiful painting marred by a careless splash of paint. As I stepped inside, the warmth of the home enveloped me, but I felt cold at my core, as if the walls themselves were closing in on me. My sister was already seated at the dining table, her long hair cascading down her back like a waterfall, a picture of serenity as she munched happily on one of the desserts. I couldn't help but notice how she seemed so effortlessly favored in my mother's eyes. My mother, bustling about the kitchen, shot my sister a beaming smile, her laughter ringing out like bells, bright and merry, while I stood awkwardly by the entrance, feeling invisible. "Isabella, come join us," she called, her tone sweet yet commanding, pulling me closer as if her delight would envelop me too. "Yeah, come on, you need to try Mom's new recipe," my sister added, grinning. My eyes narrowed, recognizing her mocking undertone cloaked in familiarity. It was as if she derived joy from the fact that I would feel compelled to follow her orders, a hierarchy we both understood but pretended not to acknowledge. "Thanks, but I'm good standing here," I replied, my voice firmer than I felt. I could feel my mother's gaze shifting from my sister to me, disappointment marring her features. I hated how that instant made me feel, how it reinforced the idea that I was not the favorite. Perhaps I never had been. "Come on, Isabella," my mother insisted, her brow furrowing slightly. "We're family, we should be together, share this moment." I wanted to roll my eyes but opted against it, realizing how much effort it took to maintain the facade of civility. "Fine." I took a tentative step towards the table, pulling out a chair across from my sister. It creaked beneath me as I settled in, the sound echoing through the stillness that had fallen. The table was adorned with the usual glossy tablecloth and an array of colorful dishes, each filled with culinary delights that would typically fill my heart with joy. But tonight, all I could taste was the bitterness buried deep within my chest. "So, Isabella," my father said, that familiar jovial tone commanding everyone's attention as he entered the room, carrying a bottle of wine. "How is your job going?" I hated how his question, though innocent on the surface, dripped with subtle judgment, as though he feared I was going to reveal a lack of success. "It's going well," I replied, forcing a smile that felt strange on my lips. "Nothing too extravagant, just manageable." I held my breath, waiting for the subtle barb I braced myself for. "Manageable," my brother chimed in, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "How inspiring." I held back my urge to lash out, feeling my pulse quicken. I was tired of being the punchline of their jokes, the scapegoat for whatever it was that was wrong in their perfect worlds. "You know, if you ever need a boost, Dad and I are always here to help," my sister said, her voice saccharine but her eyes gleaming with deception. It was always the same maneuver. Offer help, seemingly sincere, but the truth was she only wanted to remind me of my struggles, to lay them bare like an open wound. "Right," I responded flatly, inwardly cringing at the implication. "How generous of you." The remark hung in the air, and I could sense the tension rise, palpable and filled with disappointment. My sister's hand stilled on her fork, and for a moment the vibrant laughter was replaced by an awkward silence that was heavy as lead. The edges of my anger sharpened into a clearer picture of what I needed to say, to cut through the sweet veneer they put up. "You know," I began, my voice low but steady, "it is a bit unfair how it seems you two always just get what you want. Mother and father, you both seem to put her on a pedestal." "Isabella," my mother interjected, her eyes wide as if I had crossed an invisible line. I almost went pale at the suddenness of her reaction, a warning shot that stung even more than I expected. I felt exposed, unprotected, but my fury did not relent. "Why is it always about favoritism?" I continued, defiance sparking in my chest. "I worked hard too, I tried to make something of myself, but all I get is reminders of how I don't measure up." "You must understand, sweetheart," my father started, his voice heavy with that parental urge to soften the blow. "Your sister has achieved a lot and we are proud of her. It's not our fault you have chosen a different path." A strange movement stirred inside of me, something wild and untamed. "Chosen a different path," I seethed, my voice cracking at the edges. "You mean a path you never believed was good enough?" My hands shook now, trembling with the sheer force of my words. The room softened slightly, the chatter from the outside fading away as I watched their expressions morph. Without warning, my sister snapped back, her face contorting into a cruel smirk. "You are just jealous, Isabella, admit it. You refuse to see the opportunities in front of you because you are too busy feeling sorry for yourself." Her voice dripped with condescension, and I felt my chest tight, fighting to breathe through the rising tide of emotions. "Jealous, is that what you call it? You had the chance to get an education, to feel secure. Not once did you attempt to help me see that path." My fingers curled into fists, the table's wooden surface biting into my palms, yet I didn't let the pain deter me. "You both chose them over me every time. Every decision was made with me out of sight." My mother's expression of shock turned to something more defensive. "Isabella, you are being ridiculous. This is not the time or place to discuss old grievances." I felt my heart race, almost painfully, as if it wanted to break free of the domestic confines built around it. "Old grievances, is that how you view my feelings? As if they do not matter. I have been pushed aside while living in a shadow." With that, I stood up from the table, my chair scraping harshly against the floor. You all want to act like this is a happy family, I said, my voice low but fierce, but I see the truth, it's all a facade. Isabella, wait, my mother pleaded, her tone now laced with desperation, but I shook my head, consumed by the need to get away from them, to escape the air thick with resentment and betrayal. But as I turned to leave, I felt a sharp pain of regret surge through me. I am done trying to fit in a space where I don't belong. And before anyone could respond, I slammed the door behind me with such force that it shook the walls, reverberating through the house like an echo of my rebellion. Outside, the night air rushed to greet me, cool against my flushed cheeks as I blinked back, the tears swelling in my eyes. The world beyond felt vast and open, a stark contrast to the confinement I had just left behind. But more than that, a resolve began to take form in my mind, something new, something powerful. I refused to be trapped by their expectations any longer. I had been only an afterthought that was about to change. As I stepped away from the house, my heart racing with adrenaline and defiance, a thought struck me, a chilling realization that made my skin prickle with both fear and anticipation. If they were going to choose to ignore me, I would make sure they would remember me. After all of this, something greater was brewing beneath the surface, waiting to be unleashed. I took a deep breath, my mind racing, ready for the next step in this familial tug-of-war. What would I do next? The answer seemed clearer with each passing moment, answering the bitterness that bubbled within. I dashed into the night, uncertainty swirling around me like shadows, but this time I felt I was not running away, I was running toward my own truth. I would have my voice heard. They would notice my absence, and I would not be silent any longer. I had yet to reveal my secret, a card I had been holding close to my chest, and the power of it swelled within me like water behind a dam ready to burst forth.